Hey, folks, and welcome to another episode of Yes and Ask Me, a show based out of Bear Stage here in San Antonio, Texas, where I get to interview some of the most brilliant minds in the improv community. Today's show is about heightening in improv. And we have some fantastic folks to explain to us what heightening is and share some of their examples for us. My first guest is Tina Jackson. Tina, would you get out here?
Yep. Oh, hey.
Tina,
Fancy meeting you here.
what's going on, Tina? Hey, Tina,
Hi.
you're on here for heightening. How did you come to know anything about scene heightening or any kind of heightening in improv?
Are you asking about my 20 years of improv experience?
20 years of improv experience. You can just throw something like that at me.
I could if you'd asked me. You asked in such a weird way.
And you're the owner and operator of something, right?
A theater.
A
Of
theater
some variety. Yes.
of
I
some
own an
variety.
improv theater. Improv is comedy made up on the spot. Sometimes it's comedy, but mostly it's improvised theater of any kind, any genre.
Yeah.
And the theater in particular that I run is located at 1203 Camden Street in San Antonio, Texas, and its name is Bexar Stage. That's spelled Bexar Stage.
What fantastic details, Tina. Thank you so much for that time. I'm going to get back to you in a little bit, but next I'm going to introduce some of our other panelists.
That's good.
My next panelist is Tyler Waddell. Tyler, would you join us, please?
All right, here I am.
Tyler, can you give us a little bit of background as far as how much improv experience you have and where have you been doing improv?
Okay, improv experience I have. Let's see. I've been doing improv for almost 2 years now. I started off with a little bit of short form. Then I found Bear Stage, was introduced to long form, all of its joys and passions and everything like that. And I went through Bear Stage's entire 1 through 6 program, killed at every level. They did hold me back a little bit, but that was only to make others feel better. And at the end of the day, loved it. Oh, would do it all over again.
That's good. You might have to. We'll see at the end of this.
Yeah, the whole quarantine.
How any of us are improvising.
Tyler, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to get back to you in a bit, but next I want to introduce my next panelist, Kevin Miller. Would you please join us?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Kevin. Thank you for joining us. Kevin, I know you from Fancy Pants and Spooky Pants. You come down to Bear Stage every now and then and hold these shows for us. They're so much fun. Can you give us some more background as far as how much improv experience?
So many other things.
Yeah, exactly.
I do a lot. It's
go for it.
been 17, 18 years. I literally lose track of when I started, but it was soon
Mine's
after
only
college.
easy because I started in the year 2000, so I can count.
Yeah, mine was like 01 or 02, one of those two.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been almost entirely in Austin, but I have done the festival circuit quite a bit. My awesome girlfriend Kiki lives in Amsterdam, so whenever I can, which is not now, I hop back and forth to Europe and do various festivals wherever I can find them.
And we were all supposed to be in Greece a few weeks ago, I think. So
we were all supposed to be in Greece a few weeks ago.
Aww.
We were not.
We were not there.
Oh well.
Yeah, well.
That all goes without saying.
Yeah.
There will be other Grease shows, I'm sure. So,
thanks, Rick.
You're welcome. That's how I make people feel better. Tina,
what's up?
Today's show is about heightening in improv. Yeah, can you tell us, for all of our non-improvisers out there, and first maybe some of our newbie improvisers, what are we talking about when we talk about heightening?
When we're talking about heightening, we're talking about there's many ways to heighten. Heightening is a type of support that you offer in an improv scene. One of the ways we talk about heightening can include many things, but one of them is making a situation worse, doubling down on a decision that's been made by somebody or a character choice. But it's something to just take the knob of whatever that is, whether it's the character, the game of the scene, or what have you, and just turning it up a notch, right? Just to exacerbate and make that thing more important. We'll probably talk about some rule of 3, which is a great way of heightening. But it's a lot about noticing what you and your scene partner are creating, and then figuring out how to use what you've already created to keep making the scene more important by raising the stakes.
I was waiting for someone to say raising the stakes. I wanted to know how long it would take someone to get there.
I got there.
Kevin,
You know me, I'll get there.
These knobs that Tina's talking about that you're cranking up, can you name some of these knobs that were manipulating in the scene?
Oh man, now we're making music ? References.
Yeah.
I
don't know how long before we get it sexy dirty, because I feel like we're like a third of the way there.
We're like edging on it, but like we just started the show, so let's work our way up.
We're edging, are we?
Oh, Tina.
All right, we're 100% there.
Yeah, we're there.
What was the question? Oh yeah, what are the knobs?
What are the knobs, Kevin?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a hard question to answer. Raising the stakes is my normal term for heightening a scene, but it can heightening can also just be iterating on a theme. It can be one customer comes into the shop and then another, and half the SNL sketches you've ever seen follow the heightening thing. Key and Peele, I think like 99% of their sketches are heightening based, which is awesome. I show my classes the shoes sketch as just like the best heightening that's ever been done. It's just crystal clear the steps that they're taking, and it has this beautiful exponential curve in terms of the silliness of it. So I don't know what's getting the knob there is shoes, so it can be basically anything.
Oh no, I like that idea. So the knob isn't really like some rule that applies to every single improv show. The knob could be the thing that's in that scene, that's in that particular show, that you're just cranking up and doing over and over and over again, maybe repetition, doing it in a different way each time.
Yeah, and like it, I might talk a lot of sketch examples. I'm improv through and through, but it's easier to talk about stuff that was like carefully structured in advance, Yeah, and shoes, it's just like who can impress the other with their cool shoes the most, and that's it. And you can see an improv scene starting like that, one person being impressed by another person's shoes, and then the player B does something in response to trying to impress player A, and then how can I impress the other person becomes the engine that drives the scene.
Totally.
Okay. And Tyler, when I mentioned the word repetition, I saw you nodding your head. Is that something that you implement when you're on stage?
Repetition when I'm on stage. Yeah, I would say so, in sort of a way of I keep opening my mouth a lot. That's repetitive. I actually feel like I do heightening in a weird way where, and it might not be good, I might do horrible improv, who knows, but what I like to do is I like to immediately crank everything up to like 11 million, and then once it's there, then I like to go really low just to make like the distinction between the two really weird and off-putting for everybody, where it's like, we're all gonna die if we don't pet this dog, and it's like, so like I like to go big fast, and then hopefully then what's heightening is that the dog keeps getting away, or whatever, you have to pet more things, I don't know,
but you will always, no matter how high you crank that scene, you'll find a way to heighten it beyond that. So.
yeah.
Well, before the show we were talking about how sometimes just screwing up a scene and making a mess of it can be a kind of scene heightening. And that reminds me a little bit of what you're talking about, Tyler, in that you crank it up immediately and then you just start like the dog gets away, it never comes back, something happens.
Yeah. That's what I would like to imagine. Every scene I'm in is a screw up. I think that's the perfect way to look at it, and that's why people like it. People like watching failure. So
well, you can be on our next week's podcast when we talk about failure.
Yay.
One of my favorite topics. But before we get too distracted on failure, one of my favorite things to do in a scene to heighten is emotion, right? I'm a very relationship-based improviser. I love building relationships. And one of the things that for me is the easiest to crank that knob on is the knob of emotion, whatever that emotion is, to just crank it up a notch. If you start the scene feeling a little anxious, to really ramp it up. If you start by feeling, by feeling any way, shape, or form, that can change and evolve, and you heighten. I'm sure anybody who's seen me improvise at some point has seen me open mouth cry, because it's funny. It's funny to watch somebody open mouth cry, but to really you don't, to not necessarily start there, but to start by like just being upset about something, and then if it just keeps getting worse. And so like if I'm giving my scene partner this gift of whatever you say, I'm gonna cry a little bit harder, that no matter what they do then becomes like a fun game between us, that something they say could upset me, and then and we heighten the scene by they upset me, and then they're like, no, I want to calm you down, so I'll calm down a little bit, and then I'll say something else very innocuous, and I'll jump immediately back up again, and we'll calm back down, and then they'll say something just super simple, and then I'll fly to a 10. And that's when we're talking a little bit about the rule of 3, how the balance of that shifts. It's like, okay, we're gonna calm this down. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go there again. I'll just calm it down. That's 2. And then something very simple, and it's like send the rocket to space.
That requires some like discipline and expertise and experience, because
Totally.
something I'm always coaching people not to do is be calmed down. Like, if somebody's upset, then never accept somebody's apology, just, are you kidding? Like go nuts. And so I anticipate that whenever you calm down, you have it in your back pocket.
I know I'm coming back.
Exactly.
I'm not done with this. Right. Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
Be deliberate, because otherwise it's like, well, I guess the scene's not about that.
Right, exactly. Because we, this week we've been talking about, we talked about gifting on Monday. We talked about support on Wednesday. We're talking about heightening today. These all go in a similar category of how to support and play with your scene partner.
Yeah.
I mean, so do so many improv topics, but these are 3 of them. But to have that emotionality, I don't want that to go away. If I start the scene anxious, I'm going to stay anxious unless something super, super huge and pivotal, not just somebody telling me to calm down. There's nothing to worry about, because when in your life have you ever calmed down because somebody told you to? I'm not gonna. So when somebody tells me to calm down, I'll be like, okay. I'll deep breathe and I'll let it go. But I know I'm going to fly off the handle again. I fucking promise you I will, because I am not done being anxious or upset, and I will open mouth cry and like at least 60% of my scenes, right?
Yeah, I like what you said, Tina, with no matter like the simplest thing somebody says, you're going to flip out. And I think that's something I just connected between the 2 things, which is like heightening. I like to associate heightening with absurdity. Like it just makes so much sense to me, where it's like you can start out normal. You just want to get as crazy as possible. At the end of the day, you want to get somewhere where it's like, but we started over here, or like, and
that's certainly a stylistic preference too. And I do see that in your improv. I do see you going as absurd as possible. And it's very amusing to watch. I'm not going to lie to you. So no, I want you to finish what you were saying. I just wanted to say it's not what everybody's style is, but I do think it's definitely your style. And I think you do it really well.
Well, yeah, for me, it's like you got to imagine like a roller coaster. Okay, some people only are ready for the kiddie ride. They give you a little. I give you the whole thing. It'll kill you. The heightening is so crazy. Okay, it goes places that you don't want to believe. Like for example, I had a show with Rick, a DeLorean show, where we were like in space, and that's how I already know you're
that's pretty high in the heightening factor.
Yeah, and we're in space, and I have a daughter who wants to be like a tap dancer or something, and like we're like all gonna die, and like tap dancing is still like a main thing that keeps coming up, where it's like, if only I was at the tap dance lessons instead of the stupid take your daughter to space day or whatever. And it was perfect, and we went into a void of nothingness, and
hard to tap in space. I imagine that would be very hard for me as a character.
You need gravity to tap dance in space.
I have to admit, Tyler, you do have that tendency to crank up the absurdity, and I feel like that's one of your go-tos, where you recognize you introduce absurdity early on, and then you just keep on piling on more and more and more of it as the show goes on.
Yeah, and again, I think that's one style. The Brian Scribner style of make it worse is another style, which is just whatever situation is happening, Brian will figure out how to make that situation worse for the character, worse for the, and not worse for the scene. He communicates to his team members like, hey, check out what I'm doing. This is for everybody to react to. But he will step into a scene just to make it worse for somebody. Be like,
And
oh, you thought you were gonna get that letter today. I thought you heard the post office is closed forever. And it's like, well, where's that letter then? And it's like, oh, well, we could, try to find that letter. Or, oh, you wanted to call. I forgot to pay the phone bill. The phones are out too. And he'll just like, whatever it is, he will heighten the thing by taking which can sometimes, and especially when I oversimplify it like this, seem like an open denial of the scene partner. Hey, I'm trying to do something. No, that's going to be shot down.
Yeah.
I promise that's an oversimplification, and Brian generally does it in a very supportive way. That's a compliment you can take to the bank, Brian.
I come from a narrative background, and make it worse is definitely part of that. Like, I'm always encouraging, if a protagonist has been put down in the dumps, then we want to see that scene when they're walking through the rain and get splashed by a bus and
Charlie
look up
Brown
and see a billboard of their arch nemesis and his success, and and all that. And so that's one avenue. And raising the stakes, as we said at the beginning, like that's my instinct when I'm constructing a narrative, is how can we make this important to the point, like why are we if you had like Back to the Future is just one of the best scripts ever written, and it's one of those, like, it's a silly setup. Oh, a kid got sent back in time. Okay, you could probably make a cheesy 80s movie about that. Kid got sent back in time and interrupted his parents' meeting, and therefore his very existence is
now in question.
Now we've got a thing, I had a level 6 class years ago that I taught them this once, and they never let it go. Just the Mr. President, there's a problem. And you can basically you can have a scene with 2 kids playing a sandcastle, and I'm gonna build a bigger sandcastle than you. No, you're not. And you wipe that scene. Mr. President, there's a problem. And like, no matter how silly the preceding scene is, now it's something important enough to involve the president. And and this particular class did it over and over, and I never tired of it because it's great. Like instantly, it's this national crisis,
That's classic. I mean, like, in some of these moves are classic. I mean, but the reason that they work or the reason that we teach them, the reason that we work on them is because they always work, right? Mm-hmm. Is to be able to heighten it. Let's take it to a city level. Let's take it to a state level. Let's take it to a federal level. Let's take it to a planetary level. Like how do you heighten something that's huge? Is you just find something huger.
Mm-hmm.
And just figure out how to grind those gears so that this scene is really important somehow, because that gives the characters a reason to exist in this moment, and something to do or care about, a live or die sort of thing. And not every scene has to be life or death. You can do these in like little ways, little increments, right? We do many exercises in the Bexar Stage curriculum where at some point I'll just be like, you guys are on a date. It's a first date, right? But how many ways can that go? It can go really well. Oh, he's a great guy. How else is he great? Oh, he works at an animal shelter and he cares for kittens. Oh, how else is he great? He volunteers at an elderly home. Even after his grandmother died, he still volunteers there. Oh, that's so good. Oh, he gives 50% of his paycheck to charity. And you're like, you can heighten so many things about how good or bad something is going, right? And then, the character who's sitting on that first date can choose to either, care about this person or feel inadequate next to this person, like heighten their emotion. However they're emotionally feeling about this person, however they're connected. If this person gets better, does this person have to get better than that person? Is it competitive, or is it, oh, I feel worse about this thing? I hit a cat with my car on the way to work yesterday. I shouldn't tell that story, but now I feel like I really want to. Why do I want to? I'm a terrible person. To like separate the difference or rise together or fall together. This is a weird moment. I'm so sorry.
You're off on the tangent.
Guys, I'm
pull her back. Get her back.
I like the. Oh, go on, Kevin.
Well, there's a game from Ruby Willman. Shout out to Ruby. Called Ruby's 11, and you stand in a circle, and you each person one at a time says the next thing that happened in the story, and the goal is you follow a protagonist. It's, you know, once upon a time Jerry woke up and he was 5 minutes late for work, and then the next person goes around and he found out his water had been shut off, so he couldn't take a shower. And you know, and like each person adds something, and over the course of 11 steps, Jerry's life or whoever just gets worse and worse and worse till he's in the dumps, which is tricky, but it's a good muscle to practice. You have to get it ever so slightly worse to the point, you know, and yet he has to be in the absolute dumps by the end. And then you keep going, and the second 11 steps make things better and better for Jerry, and so it goes from the worst to the best. And yeah, good. There's your exercise.
No, it's a great exercise.
Fantastic exercise. Yeah.
It's a great
Number
exercise.
11, pass it along.
So Tyler, you and I were in class together. I've known you for a while now. And one thing that I love about our discussions is that you love to get inside the head of the audience and what the audience is experiencing during a show. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think the audience is feeling when they're watching improv show get continually more heightened and heightened?
Yeah, I think what I like about Heightening is not only does it do that for the audience, but it does that for the scene partner as well, or partners in the scene, where it's kind of like you're setting out like expectation, and like, so like in improv, like a lot of things are unsure and everything until things start getting established. But even then, like, people can have different ideas of where the scene's going and everything. But the nice thing about Heightening is, like, sometimes you do it once or you do it twice, but like it creates this pattern of like now the person can heighten for you or lead you into a heighten, or if they're not even at that level, they can like they can now they have something to react to, which is whatever heighten thing you just made it, right? So it makes it easier for the scene in general, and then the audience now has like payoff they're looking forward to, like of like, oh, what's it gonna be? You know, like what's gonna be behind door number 3? You know, like we've already seen these two, and you know, you really can't, from my opinion, like the only way you lose is if you lower in the heightening process, right? Like as long as it's higher, because like the odds of the audience guesses what you're gonna do is like very minimal, and so they're always impressed. They're always like, wee! And then, but if you go lower, you know, on door number 3, that's when you can run into maybe some problems. But you can always bring it back. You know, you can, you know.
It sounds like you're saying that you're building anticipation in the audience members.
Yeah.
That you want that anticipation to keep growing and growing because it creates energy. It makes them feel good.
Yeah, because what you're talking about is establishing like different games within the scene, right? That there's a game that we've got 3 doors and we're going to open all 3 of them at some point, and something terrible is going to be behind each door, right? But it's a little terrible, a medium terrible, and then like a great big gargantuan terrible. But you can do that throughout the course of the scene. You can keep touching, like the second you go near that door, they're like, what is it going to be? Right. But you can do that with, like I said, with emotion. You can do that with character traits. You can do that with building anticipation for something and then sweeping a scene. So it's like, what? No, what were they going to say?
Whoa.
Right. And we might come back to it later, or we might name what it is. Nacho.
What did
Nacho
you say?
says, what if you can't feel?
Oh, with the little
Sorry, little
robot.
robot. Oh, sorry, little robot. Everybody can feel. Sometimes it just takes a little access. That's a separate podcast, and also I charge money for it. It's called but it's yeah, you can heighten so many things and turn them into little games within your scene. And at Bear, I don't talk too much about the game, because game to me is found very organically, and there are different frames and schools of thought that perhaps forcing a game into a scene is the way to find the scene, and I disagree with that a little bit, but I love finding games within the scene, and heightening is a great way to access those games. Is if you see what was it somebody said once to me in a class, and I'll forget who, but it was that anything happens in a scene is a thing that happens in a scene, right? The second it happens a second time, you now have an opportunity to create that moment happening a third time. And because of the rule of 3, which is just an amorphous sort of rule that's just like things that happen in 3s are much funnier than things that happen in 2s or 4s. The rule of 3 exists throughout culture in general. So we stick to 3 in general. It's a good solid number for heightening. But if you want to just push those buttons or tweak those knobs or whatever, metaphor you want to use. But finding a game within the scene is just like hitting that button a bunch of times. The more you hit it, the more the audience knows what to expect. So what happens when you hover over the button? You know what you're going to expect. But the anticipation then builds for, I know what's going to happen, and it's going to be huge. It's going to be big. And I know that my scene partners are in on it because we've already done it a couple of times. Like, we know what this is the game. What about 7 times?
Nothing more maddening than when the pattern is clearly set and a player doesn't go through with it.
That is
tries to be clever, just is off in their own little world, or maybe just brain farts, which I've totally done myself. But the audience, like, they're there.
They pick up on so much.
Susan Messing says 90% of laughter is laughter of recognition, and that falls into it's like you recognize the pattern that's going on. You're getting delight in that, and at the end you can have a twist on it. Like, there can be one last thing that kind of snaps the premise in half.
Yeah.
But don't go snapping until you're at the button.
When you're directing short form in something like a Fancy Pants or something, what are some ways that you can coach people into heightening their scene a little bit more? If their scene's falling a little flat on energy, how do you tell them to tweak that?
The direction I might give might be to make a confession. That's just classic, going back 80 years, thing to insert into an improv scene. Pull out a gun, pull out a wedding ring, something like that. But what I really wish I could direct is to just yell out, react, because it doesn't matter. Like, and this is not even a heightening thing. It's just an improv thing. I'm always like, so I made pancakes for breakfast. You what?
Why?
Yeah.
I hate pancakes.
Right.
It's my fucking birthday.
Well, it's the worst birthday ever. Look what I got you. A giant pile of feces.
I hate feces.
I know you hate feces. I ordered it specifically. I know rhino feces are your least favorite.
So now I know, no matter whatever you could have said, it was the giantest birthday cake in red velvet and 3 tiers, and I would hate it. I would hate it because you made pancakes, and my immediate reaction was to hate that reaction, or was to hate that. We're on the same page. I was
thinking the third beat would be something like extremely delightful.
Super nice.
It's a puppy dressed as a kitten. Look at it.
That's adorable, and I hate it. I hate it because it came from you.
Back and it can't roll over.
But I think Ignacio, to your question about what if you can't feel, I think one of the things that I try to coach my students is, if you're having trouble accessing emotions, remember, no emotion is wrong at any point. I think a lot of people try to react properly to something, and any reaction is the right reaction. He could say, hey, good morning, I made pancakes, and I could cry, and that's the right reaction. I could say, oh, thanks.
But have an emotion. Have some
any emotion. You can fake any emotion at any time. I guarantee you understand what emotions are. And that if you don't, that you have at least seen a lot of people emote in your life. Enough that you can at least fake it a little bit. There's no right or wrong reaction if you're using an emotion, because anything can cause any emotional reaction. The idea here is to create a character that feels consistent enough, right? So if I hate pancakes and puppies, what else could I hate? And it's like, and if you got me a plush blanket, you better send it back, because I sleep on the bare floor.
Oh, I got you a plush blanket. Look, it's called carpet, okay?
I'm not going to step on it because my feet would be too comfy.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? Look down.
Yeah. So you can feel, there is no right or wrong emotional reaction in improv. You might find a difference in your real life, but I'm not here to coach you on that. I'm here to coach you on your improv life. In your improv life, you can't react too wrong, because any emotion that you choose is correct. You just stick to it. and then fluctuate on the scale of what that emotion is. You can go less than what you started with, you can go more than what you started with, but fluctuating in either direction, preferably in the more direction, just because generally that typically is funnier. But like Kevin said, don't be calmed down. Live in the spectrum of whatever emotion you chose at the top of the scene. Live in that for the rest of the scene. And I promise you're doing it right.
And that's commitment. What you're talking about there is the commitment to your character, commitment to your emotion. Yeah. Something that we learn in improv, of course.
Yeah.
Tyler, I saw your eyes sparkle as soon as Kevin said feces, because I know how much you love to throw poop into your shows.
Yeah, it works. That's all I can say is
you didn't learn that from me.
It gets attention. I've been known not to be great at object work, but I have become an object before, and that was a butt plug, and I popped out of someone's ass before, and these are just things that need to happen in improv, and so feces.
Oh no!
Well, you know what? Improv's not.
Just
you
screenshot
hear that
Tina's
word,
face.
but there's a few exceptions, and feces is one of them.
Okay.
I'm just saying, if improv kept happening for the next 100 years and nobody said feces, the end of the world's gonna happen. It's just it's not a good look.
For the next 100 years, it would be fine.
No.
Oh God.
Oh man. I don't know how to respond to this. I feel personally responsible.
No, Tina, please, please don't.
You're right. I don't want to take credit for your shine.
Kevin, I took your narrative workshop in San Antonio last year. Yeah, and I had a fantastic time with it. And I remember that one of the things you taught us in that was how to heighten the scene by just doing a walk-on, like a quick walk-on. And one of your lessons that you taught us was walk by, say something, to heighten the scene, and then walk away. Something like oh my God, the house is on fire. Or, oh my God, I got the phone call, there was a car accident. Bye, and then leave.
Yeah.
And I loved your other story earlier about how just the edit the scene and then come in as Mr. President, as if something, it's those stakes are so high. It's a life or death situation now. I think those taking away from this a few easy ways that we can heighten scenes and make our shows more interesting in improv. I think that's a fantastic lesson.
Yeah, the my best heightening story ever, which I'm certain I must have said this because my favorite example.
That's fine. This is exactly the place where we want to hear that story again.
Yeah. Exactly. It was Tim Orr from San Francisco, and I forget who his scene partner. Do you know Tim, Tina?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I forget who his scene partner was, but they're doing a scene with the father and daughter, and she's joining the Loyal Order of the Moose. And it's this adorable scene. And, she's got the moose antlers, and they're doing a speak in one voice, like, let's say the Moose Creed, honey. And it's just so delightful and, and silly. And I don't remember, but I think there was a noise in the audience. Somebody dropped something in the audience. And Tim reacted to that. And he's like, wait a minute. Get down! and he and his daughter both just hit the ground. And she's like, Daddy, what was it? The elk. And the elk had come for her. And 10 seconds after that, he has her going into the pantry and pulling a box aside to open the arsenal and grabbing guns. And 2 minutes after that, they're in the car, and he's like, honey, do you know what laying down covering fire is? And and she's licking shots out the back of the car while she drives along. And this scene has gone from just silly to what the fuck, in less than 5 minutes. And, and he says something about the elk want you and I have to protect you. And she says, but Daddy, why do they want me? And there's this look I'll never forget, which is just you could see Tim Orr himself, the actor, just, should I take it a step further? I'm going to take it a step further.
I guess I'm going to have to.
And I said, why do they want me? And he goes, there's a prophecy. It's like just when you thought this couldn't get any sillier, now it has this metaphysical resonance
God.
to it. Oh, it's
No,
so
I watch way
beautiful.
too much Buffy. I was expecting a prophecy. I was like,
Oh, good. Yeah. And like what it was good. It was like as crazy as it got, it every step connected to the last step. It never felt random. It was never outside of their character. Like he was still being a dorky dad, just a dorky dad who had prepped for Doomsday and Doomsday was here, you know? So it added layers.
I think that's such a great point, is that it's still based in whatever the reality of the scene is, right? It's based on the moment before it, right? So it's not pre-calculated. It's not, hey, in this show, we're definitely going to get to a presidential level. So let's definitely work toward that.
Right.
It's not that. It's really just, the noise sparked something, and it was like a fearful reaction. And then he had to decide in those moments, like what that threat was and how we were going to then approach the next moment. We don't ignore the threat. We don't ignore, like we use all of those moments, those hyper listening moments, to create more of that real world. And I love that. Right. So that was the real world of this Moose organization.
The real world, yeah. The Moose.
Yeah. It was their reality. It's to heighten the current reality.
Right. Exactly.
I love that.
Heightening the reality. Oh, go on.
Nope. Go on.
Just the different things you can heighten in the scene. Tina, you talked about heightening the emotion in a character, heightening that character's emotion, heightening the reality of the scene, the repetition to heighten the energy that the audience feels, increase that anticipation. I think that you guys touched on so many different ways to add. I don't want to say added value. It's probably wrong to say add value to the scene.
Yeah, I mean it's adding
meaning,
weight,
meaning,
I think.
interest.
It's making the scene more important.
Yeah.
That we solve or don't solve this thing or have this conversation. Like it gives the scene more gravity.
This connects over, gravity. Jason Schatz says, like, I don't care if your scene is about Captain Space Dick Dildo, as long as there is a part of you that is real and human. So Captain Space Dick Dildo can be throwing dildos everywhere, as long as somewhere in the scene he goes, man, I just feel like nobody gets me. And now we've connected to it on an emotional level. And now you go from like laughing right now to remembering it after the show. Yeah, as you drive.
Yeah. Tyler, you're nodding your head like Captain Dick Dildo, and you're like, yeah, I get that guy.
Yeah, like I agree. I think that's the biggest thing, is like I feel like the reason I like to go so absurd with everything is that I feel like I like having those reactions though that can be related to that, even though the situation is like usually like so out of like context or not, someone's never experienced it before, probably won't ever. That the fact that there are these tethering things of like, yeah, but that makes sense how, like that they would react to that, or if they're like a crazy person and they're reacting, but like at least you understand like where the character's coming from or something like that. I love that.
Folks, that is the end of our show. Scene heightening, character heightening, absurdity, repetition. We didn't even talk a whole lot about callbacks. I mean, that's a whole
callbacks is another bag of worms.
Exactly.
Heighten, bring it back.
Yeah, another way to heighten a scene or a show. Folks, thank you all for joining. Kevin Miller, thank you so much for being on the show. If for all of the audience members, Kevin, it might be a while, but if anybody has a chance to take a Kevin Miller workshop, I highly recommend it. I had a wonderful time there. Tyler, thank you for being on the show, man. Thank you for talking about poop. It's about time. I appreciate it.
People need to hear my take on it, and I've been kicked off many other podcasts for spreading my beliefs about it, but I'm glad that you'll have me on here and support my poop endeavors.
Rick, we're gonna have a conversation, Rick.
Tina Jackson, my middle square. Thank you for being the sponsor of the show. Thank you for being our teacher. You rock. And thank you to all of our live Twitch viewers. I love all of these comments. They're fantastic. Even if it's not Ignacio, but even if Ignacio's friend can't feel something, there are ways around that. Again, thank you all for joining and for watching this. Let me just say right now, though, that as you guys know, things are a little bit crazy in the world right now. If you like what you saw today and you live in a different city from San Antonio, and you've never been to improv, or you've seen many improv shows, I can guarantee you that the improv theaters in your hometown are hurting a little bit right now. Go online and do a web search, find an improv theater, and give them something to support them, because they could use it. Here in San Antonio, oh, actually, Kevin, do you have a theater that you're based out of?
I teach at Merlin Works, and we do online classes.
Are you doing online classes right now?
Yeah, Shayna Merlin is running a 101 class, and she realized that half of our students don't live in Texas. So I don't know. They're just finding us on
It's
Google.
a whole new improv world right now, baby.
I know. It's a weird Wild West thing.
So if somebody looks up Merlin Works, they'll be able to find this theater.
Merlin Works in Austin.
Merlin-works.com. You have to remember the dash, or just Google.
All right, fantastic. So you can go to Merlin Works and sign up for a class. Find another theater in your area and donate to them. If you're in San Antonio, if you've been to Bear Stage, if you like what you saw today, go to bearstage.com. There's a donate button right on that front page. Folks, thank you all again for your time. I had a wonderful time with these guys, and I hope you did too. And I'll see you all on Monday.
Woo! See you soon.